Hey, welcome to Let's Unravel, and I'm your friend Christina. So, hot take. Are hot takes really that hot? Let me know your thoughts and comments down below, and I'll let you know my thoughts at the end of this episode. So, thanks for stopping by. Whether you're a new listener or friend of the show, I just wanted to say welcome. So, guys, how you doing? If you are anything like me, I have been struggling. Because I currently have the flu. I've had the flu for about a week, almost a week and a half now, and this is like the first time I've worn makeup in about a week and a half. I have been dying. No, I haven't been dying. I have been surviving, all of me, for the last week and a half. And so I hope for all of you out there, please stay safe and healthy. You do not want whatever it is that I have. Anyways, if you happen to be listening or watching on YouTube, make sure you're pressing that subscribe button. Guys, let's keep growing that community. We got to boost that algorithm. Those likes, comments, subscribes, they all go a really long way. And if you happen to be listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, make sure you're pressing that follow button to stay up to date on all new episodes. And let's not forget, you can cast your vote on what the hot take is right on Spotify. So, pop open that show notes, scroll all the way down to the bottom and select, are hot takes really that hot or are they not? Let me know. And don't forget, you can also join our community on Facebook at Let's Unravel Podcast. And there is going to be, okay, guys, I've been saying this for a couple of weeks now, but I'm telling you, I have been sick for a while. And so I haven't been able to do any new adjustments yet. But I'm telling you, our Facebook page, our Instagram, our TikTok, they are going to be exploding once I'm feeling better. I'm talking all kinds of behind the scenes content, day in the lives, all kinds of stuff are coming your way. And you are not going to want to miss out on those things. So make sure you're heading to Facebook, TikTok, and Instagram at Let's Unravel Pod so you can join and be part of those communities. So now, without any further ado, let's move into our favorite topic here at Let's Unravel, Win of the Week. So our win this week, I'm just going to say it like it is. Me being here, being consistent. I wasn't sure if I was going to have an episode for you guys this week. I mean, I have been that sick, but I stayed the course. I wrote out an episode and I was like, come on, Christina. You could do this. There has been times where I've had to work under far worse conditions of being sick. I mean, like when I worked in a retail store, I would have the flu and still have to go work a 10 to 12 hour shift. So, I have done some crazy things while being sick. So I'm like, come on, Christina, this is child's play. You could do this, okay? But yeah, so anyway, so the win of the week this week is I'm here. I'm not going to lie. I will be honest with you guys. I did try to call in like a substitute. Growing up, I grew up in like the early 2000s and was in high school in the 2010s. And so, the best day of the week was whenever you got like a substitute teacher because you were like movie day. Like it was the best day. And I tried to call in a substitute, and I am going to give a quick round of applause for my sister, Ashley. I was talking to her last night. I'm filming this on Sunday, the Sunday before Thursday, because I'm going to need a few days to edit this. And so I called her last night and I was like, so do you want to host Let's Unravel? And I'm telling you, she was willing. It was just more technical glitches. I've never had like a substitute yet. And of course, she's not going to come to my house to film where like I typically film because she doesn't want to get sick. And, she has been healthy. So you know what? Just a quick round of applause. A big thank you to Ashley. She would have been the substitute teacher had I let her be the substitute teacher. But nope. Instead, our topic this week, you could kind of think of it as like a movie day, because what we're doing, we're not introducing a new topic. We are actually, let's just put it this way. What are we unraveling today? Let's unravel our top 3 episodes. So I actually had gotten this idea and I wanted to do this regardless of being sick, but I had wanted to go through what our top 3 episodes were for Let's Unravel. And so I had pulled all the views and the downloads to see what our top 3 episodes were. So the 3 episodes I'm going to talk about now, I will reveal them as we go through. But I'm going to have one quick little caveat. So if my voice sounds like it starts to crack or like I'm losing my voice, it's because I am. So please bear with me. Please forgive me. I am doing the best I can. But also, something else that I have noticed since I've been sick. One, my best friend is NyQuil. So the funny thing is, like I always would tell like my friends and my family, I'm like, my drug of choice is NyQuil. I don't sleep great at night. So the fact that I can take NyQuil and I sleep like a perfect 8 hours, that is the dream of my life. So honestly, when I'm sick, am I really sick? Because I get to hang out with my best friend NyQuil. Do you know what I'm saying? But anyways, because I've been taking different medications for being sick, one of the funniest things, like, do we ever really stop to think about this? But like, The amount of side effects on medication is crazy. Like, I know on my dad's side of the family, when we get together, there's certain commercials that we just laugh at because the side effects are crazy. Like, there was one drug commercial we had watched. I think it was at like my grandparents' house. This was years ago, but we had sat and watched, and one of the side effects was explosive, uncontrollable diarrhea. And to this day, we all still laugh about that because it's hysterical. Now, obviously, the medical field has to put that out there because lawsuits. But what's even crazier is people still take that medication. So even though there's the possibility of explosive, uncontrollable diarrhea, they're like, you know what? That is a chance I am willing to take. But you know what? In the spirit of medications and knowing that one drug could solve your problems, because I'm not going to lie, when you're sick, you're willing to do a lot of things to try to feel better, especially if you've been sick for any amount of time. So one of the ways I figured I'd make this episode kind of exciting is before I reveal what the episode is, I'm going to give you the medication commercial, like, if you suffer or experience this, this is why this episode would be good for you. So, just humor me, that type of thing. Anyways, so what we're going to do in this episode is, so I'm going to reveal the episode to you, but I'm going to give you the framework of this episode in a very concise and easy way. So, and if you want any more additional details, I'll have the links for all of these episodes in the show notes down below. So without any further ado, let's go for it. So have you been experiencing any feelings of anger and frustration and even like annoyance with where you're at in life? Or maybe you're feeling lost, or maybe you're feeling worried. The episode that can solve those problems is episode 16, Knowing Your Season, aka a failed job interview, and many more things to follow. So the framework of knowing your season is, this idea was born out of the simple ideas of all the shoulds and woulds that either society puts on us or it's the expectations of the people that we grow up around. So instead of assessing what our desires and our dreams and our goals are in life, instead we try to mold our lives around what society deems to be successful instead of actually finding out what you find to be successful. So within this episode, once we removed the layers of the shoulds and the woulds of what everybody else wanted for us, we needed to first start assessing what it is that we wanted. So once you remove the noise of that and you start moving forward into, what is it that I actually want? Maybe you don't want to work that 9-to-5 job. Maybe you do want to work that 9-to-5 job, but maybe you're someone that it's more than just the 9-to-5 job. Maybe you want a certain managerial role within your 9-to-5 job. Maybe you want to start your own business. So now that we've assessed what your goals are, the next biggest, most important thing that you can do is understand what is going to benefit you on the journey of getting there. And so what that would look like is being able to identify what the right things in your life are to say yes to and what the right things are to say no to. Because in every season of life that you have, you need to understand what's going to benefit you and what is going to hurt your progress. And so one of the hard truths that we had to acknowledge in this particular episode was realizing your 20s are your foundational years. So when you start to look at your 20s as your foundational decade, you can start to look at it kind of like building a house. So whether you're someone that has a blue-collar worker within your family, whether you yourself are a blue-collar worker, this is where you can start to look at life. So growing up, my dad actually had built a few houses as like his job. And so a lot of times we'd go on these job sites and you would see that first you start by you're digging up the foundation of where you're going to eventually lay your concrete foundation. And so what happens is it's just land. It's just a bunch of dirt. You pay a ton of money for these trucks to come in and just start shoveling up all kinds of dirt. And then once you make a hole big enough, you start to lay the parameters of where your foundation is going to go. So the funniest thing is this, is anytime you drive by a house that is being like newly constructed, is if you are driving past it, you don't see necessarily the hole in the ground, or maybe you see small visuals of it. But the point is, you don't actually see how deep that hole is in the ground until you're literally like out of your car. You're walking to the hole and then you can look down and you can see it. That is one thing that I've noticed. So during this foundational like decade in your life, that is what it's going to look like. Very rarely are people from like the bystanders are going to be able to see like, wow, you're doing all this really hard work. It's really only the people that are closest to you in your life. Just like the closer you get to a site, you're able to see more of this particular house foundation and the whole digging experience. But it's the same thing when you go to lay the cement. So once you start to pour the foundation and you're seeing it all come together, most people don't even realize the progress of building a new house until the framing is up. And the framing is just all the wooden beams showing the layout of the house. But in this instance, in your 20s, really, it's the digging the hole it's laying the parameters, it's pouring the foundation. That's what your 20s actually look like. And then once you start to get to your mid to late 20s, that's really when the framing starts to happen. That's not even really having walls. That's just having the beams and the pillars. So that was a hard truth that we came to the realization of in this particular episode. But once you're able to recognize that and understand it, it actually makes your 20s so much more bearable because then you're willing to go after the things that you want to have because they might not be completed in your 20s. You don't always get to see the benefit or the reward of it until your 30s, which is totally fine. You know, we live in a society where we're so used to getting everything so quickly, but sometimes the best things in life are worth the wait. I mean, look at everybody doing sourdough bread. That doesn't come together instantaneously. You have to make a starter, you have to let it rise, you have to bake it. There's so many things, and that is what the importance of episode 16, Knowing Your Seasons, was all about. And of course, within that episode, we talked about Taylor Swift and how she is the master songwriter and about how she has made every album of hers basically a season, and then she rebranded it by using the word era. Now, obviously, people had always used the word era, but it gave it a new meaning when Taylor Swift changed it into basically rebranding seasons to eras. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe it was during her Lover era. That's when she introduced her Lover house. And then you started to see that every single room represented an album. It represented a season in her life. And that was something that was really cool that she brought to life. And then she brought it to life on stage during her Eras tour. And that's when you got to see this house in live action. You got to experience every season of her life and go through each era. So we did talk about that in more in depth in episode 16. And so, of course, with knowing your season, we needed to identify what type of season you're in. There's two different types of seasons that we typically go through in life. We go through our growth seasons and we go through rest seasons. And so one of the ways that we broke it down was growth seasons typically looked like summer and winter months. And the reason why was because it had a high intensity and unpredictable nature to it, which is often like growth. Growth will often be something that feels unpredictable. It's intense. It can be doing a lot of things that you don't like to do. Some people do enjoy those growth months, and a lot of people don't enjoy those growth months. So that was something to identify. If you're going through a season in life where you're like, this feels like high intensity, it's your first year out of college, it could feel like a high intensity growth season. It could be your first year working at a big girl or big boy company. That could be your growth season. But you know what was always so cool is when you got to rest seasons. So you'd go through these big seasons of growth where it's like getting out of college, graduating college, trying to find your job, you get into the new job. But once you get settled, that's when you get to hit this season of rest where it's more relaxed or it's neutralized, where it's not so much like everything doesn't feel heavy and all at once. It's just more like everything's kind of like at rest, it's at peace. And that's when I think about the seasons of like fall and spring. Like you think about spring where it's like, okay, spring comes, it's your first really nice day. Everyone is super excited to get out of the house and it's like, you just get to enjoy the season. And that is a lot of time, those rest seasons that we have in life. And of course, another big point that we did talk about that's really important to think about is your experiences are going to impact your expectations. You have to see the life that you want to have. So one of the biggest things people always say is if you want to be a successful person in life, or let's drop the be a successful person, because success is really dictated based on how you would describe success. But let's say there's a certain lifestyle that you want to have. Maybe you're the type of person where it's like you want to stay at 5-star hotels. Well, one of my favorite practices that people will do is they'll say, if you want to know what it's like to be at a 5-star hotel, most 5-star hotels will have like a coffee shop or a restaurant or even a lobby, a hotel lobby. And you know what? You can go into those hotel lobbies, bring your computer. Maybe you're paying $8, $10 for a cup of coffee, but you're being around the environment that you eventually want to be in. And you need to see what that ecosystem of that environment is. It's super important. It's the very same idea about knowing the ecosystem of a season in life, because in all seasons, it all has a beginning and it all has an end. Now, some people feel like they're in a forever season is because your experiences are impacting your expectations. Once you stop and you can break your mindset of believing that, like kind of like that Eeyore mentality of where it's like, oh me, oh this, oh that. That is the reason why you're having a forever season. That season was not meant to last forever. For all you know, you could actually be in a rest season, but you're complaining the whole time. And whatever your attitude is ultimately going to be the mantra of that season. So if you want to have a good season, even if it's a hard season, I've had hard seasons in life, but if you can keep an upbeat attitude, it can still be one of the best seasons you end up having. Because even in growth can be so incredibly great for you. It shows you what you're made of. And so, like I said, all seasons, they have a beginning and they have an end, and there's high intensity to all of them. But if you want to know when you're getting to the end of one particular season, you always have to remember this. It's always darkest right before dawn. So whenever you start to think this is the most unbearable part of the season, it's not till it's truly at your breaking point. That's when that season's almost over, because it's basically every season has a principle that you need to learn from it because it's the anchor of that season. So when you get to this point in your season where you still are like, I don't know what I've really learned from the season, odds are you're probably not quite over with it yet, because by the end of the season, you're going to realize you're like, oh my goodness, like this is the lesson that I learned. This is the anchor for my life moving forward. And so to wrap the whole episode up, our episode in a phrase for knowing your season was seasons shift perspective, because every season builds upon itself. Like I said, look at the Taylor Swift house. Every season built upon itself. All right. So for our number 2 top rated episode, have you been suffering from these burning thoughts? I mean, I know nothing. I'm an imposter. How did I even get here? I have no experience. And they expect me to know how to do what? What if they ask me to do something and I have no clue about it? Have you been experiencing any of those symptoms? Because our second most rated episode is episode 2, Humble Beginnings. You know what? That kind of worked out perfectly. Top 2. See what I'm talking about there? Anyways, so the framework behind this episode was all about how humble beginnings leaves its marks. And we have to embrace them because they are oftentimes the marking points in our lives. And so a big theme in this whole episode is we talked about messy beginnings. I told you stories about how I used to make duct tape wallets. If you want to hear more about that story, check out Humble Beginnings in the show notes down below. We talked about my first few weeks working at a startup that specialized in cybersecurity. You know what? Spoiler alert. I ended up getting hacked. If you want to hear that story, like I said, go listen to the episode in full. But the whole point of that episode was all about messy beginnings, and they are more common than you think they are. And oftentimes, they are the best beginnings. Why? Because there is nothing that will teach you, or there is nothing that will make you want to learn quicker or more on the fly than having a messy start. There's no better learning experience than mistakes. That's all I'm going to say. You know what? I have never forgotten a mistake that I've had, because ultimately those are the things that stick with you. You don't always think about everything that you did right, but I can promise you think about everything that you did wrong. It's just some type of like human nature thing that we do, where we always are analyzing, what did I do wrong? That type of thing. And most importantly, from those messy starts, we're always thinking about like, oh God, like that was rocky, that was messy. But once again, everyone has at least one messy start. I mean, let's talk about the trend that is going on right now, where everyone is bringing up like 2026 is the new 2016. I think it's hysterical that we are going back a decade ago and looking at all of the photos from 2016. And you know what? I think I was like 19 at the time. Well, yes, that would be the math. I was 19 at the time. But it's so funny to look back at 2016 and to just see like 19/20-year-old Christina wore a lot of eyeshadow. If I could go back in time, I'd be like, girl, take off some eyeshadow. That was so much eyeshadow. But once again, she was young, she was naive, she wanted to do all different kinds of things. And that is the same thing of life. It's messy. You have messy starts or cringy beginnings. Oh my goodness, there we go. Cringy beginnings. So everybody has cringy beginnings. They do. It's life. You look back on photos, you're like, why was I posing with a graffiti wall? How did I find all of these graffiti walls? And it's absolutely hilarious. Or what's up with this trending ice cream? Everyone is eating ice cream out of these like Japanese style waffle cones. I found one of those photos from 2016. Anyways, but ultimately, everybody has messy beginnings. Everyone has those, or not messy, cringy. Come on, Christina. Anyways, but just like how I had said, maybe you're feeling like you're an imposter. You got one of those new jobs. You landed a new role. You know what's so interesting? Something I have observed since working in corporate is people will work so hard to get to a certain title, to get to a certain position, and then they hit those positions and all of a sudden they like stop and they freeze in doubt. And all of a sudden it's like, I don't know, am I really capable? Am I really smart? And I'm like, no. By the time you got into this job, the title is a formality. Like you already know how to do this. Like most good leaders will show you how to do the role before you ever get the title, because the idea is once they give you the title, you already are doing it effortlessly. It's like you know how to do it. You don't have that imposter syndrome. There's nothing worse than when you take someone off the streets, you drop them in a job, you give them a really high fancy title, and you don't give them any job description, and you're just like, dance monkey, dance. And of course you feel like an imposter. Of course you feel like, how did I get here? But once again, one of the most important things you can do is you need to have good self-talk. I'm going to say that again for the people in the back. You need to have good self-talk. And so in this episode, what I had told you is I hate, absolutely capital H, I hate the phrase fake it till you make it. I just do. That phrase brought nothing but worry, doubt, and anxiety into my life. And I'm just going to be honest about it. I am passionate about how much I hate that phrase. Fake it till you make it. I remember working in retail and I would have managers ask me to do different things and I'd be like, don't worry, I'm going to fake it till I make it. But all that it ever did for me was it made me always think like, okay, do I actually know how to do this or did I just get lucky? But let me tell you this, when you throw out that phrase and you rename it to believe it to be it, because you're going to start believing that you can do certain things. And you know what? I believe I can be a manager of a store. I believe I can run this store better than, I don't know, so-and-so. Or I believe I can do better than I did the day before. I believe that. And ultimately what happens is as you start to believe in yourself, and one of the ways that you're going to start to believe in yourself is you're going to create a habit of believing in yourself. The only way you're going to believe yourself, though, is you have to keep your word. You keep your word by acknowledging what your yes looks like and acknowledging what your no looks like. So just like we talked about knowing your season and how your yes and your no is incredibly important to dictating how well of a season of life is. And you know what? I had seasons of my life. Yes, I'm going back to the previous episode. There's been seasons in my life where saying no was the most helpful, beneficial thing I could do for myself. And the thing is, when you're starting to say no to things and you know what to say yes to, it also will reflect the motive of what your friends around you look like too. Because if people aren't respecting your no, maybe they shouldn't be your friend. You know what? Maybe that's a hot take, but it's true. If someone can't respect when you say, no, I'm sorry, I can't hang out, I'm doing X, Y, and Z. If you have to constantly explain your no to somebody, they don't respect you. I'm just going to be honest with you right now. If you say, hey, I can't do that right now. And you know what? I will also give the caveat. It is nice to give people context. I think it's great if there is someone that you're friends with, you value that friendship and you say, hey, like there was a season in my life when I was writing a book and I would tell my friends like, hey, I'm writing a book right now. It's taking all of me to do it. This means like all the free time I have, I am just dedicating myself to writing. And like I had some friends that would push back on me and they'd be like, you can't take a break. And I'm like, that's not the point. The point is in this season, I'm saying yes to fewer things. Well, I'm not saying yes to fewer things. I'm saying yes to writing a book. That's what I'm doing. I'm saying no to things that conflict with my yes. That is what I'm doing. So when you get into these moments in your life, these messy beginnings, and you're throwing out the fake it to make it and you're rebranding it as believe it to be it, you need to set good habits for yourself. You need to understand what you're saying yes to. In this moment, I'm saying yes to I believe in myself. I'm not faking it because you know what? I love the interview with the Olympic athlete Alona Mars and how she sat down for an interview with, I don't know if it was like a news channel or ESPN or whoever the news interviewer was. And she goes, oh, do you struggle with imposter syndrome? And Alona Mars was like, no, I worked incredibly hard to get here. I want you to feel that way. I want you to know, no, I got this promotion. I am the best. There is nothing wrong with believing that you are the best. There's nothing. You want to know what the difference is between you and high performers, or do you want to know what the difference is between you and the Fortune 500 CEOs? They know they're the best. They know it. They don't doubt it. You even look at people like Steve Jobs, and you know what? People hated him. Yeah, and I'm not saying he wasn't a jerk. I'm sure he was. Because honestly, to get to those levels, you have a little bit of an ego on you. But what you need to know at the end of the day is that you're the best. You do. And the thing is, your best looks different at different places. I mean, Steve Jobs started in a garage, but he still would have said he was the best. He had messy, cringy beginnings, but even in that garage, he knew he was the best. So I want you to start to believe that. You are the best no matter how humble your beginnings are. You can still be the best. So if there was one thing out of the whole episode I had been dying for everybody to take away from it was just start. Don't wait. Doubt is the enemy to progress. That is the biggest thing you need to know is doubt is the enemy to progress. Values come from experiences and knowledge. When you lack one of them, you go for the other one. My mistakes became the best training examples. They are. I mean, those are my favorite stories to tell. I got hacked. I made duct tape wallets. I promised to have 10 duct tape wallets in a Connecticut gift shop when I didn't even know how to make them. Yep, story of my life. And somehow I ended up doing it. If you want to know the full story, like I said, click that link in the show notes down below. But most important is where you start doesn't determine where you end up. And as a side note, people can be incredibly gracious if you give them the opportunity to be gracious. So when you say, hey, I don't know how to do this, I'm learning it all on the fly. You give them that opportunity to be gracious with you by saying, hey, I'm just going to admit right now, I have no clue what's going on. You know what? Surprisingly, there's a lot of people out there that want to share their expertise. But if you want to receive somebody gracious, you first have to be gracious. And that ultimately means you have to show a little vulnerability by saying, hey, you know what? I don't know everything and I'm doing the best I can. And the last big thought that we had in that episode is we had compared character building moments versus humble beginnings. We had talked about how character building moments was all about the you, yourself, and I. It was this internal experience, whereas humble beginnings was all about that external public facing where people can see how you're starting, whether it was messy or cringy or it was so 2016. That was what the biggest difference was. And at this point in time, we did not have episodes in a phrase, but the biggest thing I wanted you to summarize from that episode was believe it to be it. Yes, that's all. So moving into our third top rated episode, have you been experiencing any kind of heaviness or does something feel kind of off? This leads us into our third top rated episode, episode 8, Silent Surrender. This episode was born out of like a silly little memory I had of playing cops and robbers with my brother and a bunch of my boy cousins growing up, and how with being the youngest cousin and also being a girl, I ran a lot slower than all of the boy cousins. And they would always corner me and they'd always say, do you surrender? Do you give up? And so in the framework of this episode, I had talked about how in my mind, I had always tied surrender with giving up. Maybe you also tied surrender with giving up. But really, the whole moral of the episode was about how surrender has nothing to do with giving up. It's actually about letting go. And letting go is something that can feel quite humbling at times. And the other biggest thing I had realized with surrender is oftentimes it's silent. You're silently surrendering. You're letting go. And I had talked about that very common phrase, if you love something, you let it go. And if it comes back to you, it means it was meant for you. And that was what the beauty of silent surrender was. You always see these beautiful moments in life where the guy lets the girl go and all of a sudden you're like, oh my God, is it going to come back? So obviously the framework around this episode was about surrender, but really it was coming to the end of yourself in something or someone, and you had to surrender certain expectations that you had. So whether it was the dreams that you had of what you thought your life was going to look like. I had talked about how when I was in high school, my dreams were a lot about film production, and I thought my life was going to look very different. I thought my life was going to be working on sets, being on movies, and all these different things. But I had to end up letting that go because my dreams changed over time. Sometimes you have to let go of someone that you love or let go of a relationship that you're in to get to something better. And you won't always get to that something better until you first start by letting something go. And that was one of the biggest ideas that we talked about within this episode. Letting go of relationships, letting go of dreams, letting go of careers. Because right on the other side of letting go could actually be something you never even imagined for yourself. It could be so much better. And so the best part within this framework was how we really broke down both of the words, silence and surrender. Silence. Oftentimes, when you talk to most people, they will say silence is one of the most uncomfortable feelings until you learn to get comfortable in silence. And the power of silence is it can reveal everything to you. There's something about being left alone, being in silence with yourself. That's when you can't escape what's right in front of you. And that is what is so impactful about silence. Whether you're sitting in silence with someone else, whether you're sitting in silence with yourself, you're getting a form of clarity that you can't get when you're surrounded by noise. And it's the same kind of clarity you get when you surrender. Because when you're surrendering something, oftentimes people don't usually know when you're like, I surrender, except for when you're playing games and you're like, okay, I surrender, I give up, you know, that type of thing. But how often in life do you hear, I surrendered? Like, I just surrendered. Like, I gave it all up. Like, no. I mean, yes, you'll have people that will share stories of their life where it's like maybe they struggled with drugs, maybe they struggled with alcohol, and they talk about how they give it up. But there's this really sobering moment in their life where they're like, you know what? I think I'm going to start to surrender that. I think I'm going to let it go. And, a perfect example of this, which this is a new idea. I didn't talk about this in Silent Surrender, but Tom Holland was a perfect example of this, where he had decided he was going to do a dry January a couple years ago, and he realized he had a really hard time letting go of alcohol. And then he turned his dry January into like another month or two. And next thing you know, he goes, I realized I had a bigger problem with alcohol than I ever thought I actually did. If it wasn't for him having those like silent moments of surrendering and letting go of something, he would have never come to the clarity that it was like, okay, maybe this is an issue. And I think there's something really beautiful about having that silence in your life where you can have those clarity moments. And then even the same thing with surrender. When you look at that word, it's the art of letting go. If you can get really good at surrendering things that aren't working well for you, it's the art of letting go. Sometimes you have to surrender friendships because if they're for you, they'll come back to you. And if they're not coming back to you, maybe they were never for you. That's a hard truth. And it's not easy. I will tell you that. But it is a far better life to live of surrendering and letting someone go, because then if they come back, they were meant for you. It's something that is for you. But one of the caveats I had given in this episode was surrender oftentimes looks like loss at first, but it's actually preparation for something better. And a new idea that I wanted to bring into this framework was loyalty is a close friend to surrender. If you think about that, when someone is willing to surrender, they're willing to separate themselves from an idea that they have or an expectation that they want, and they're able to step it aside to look at a bigger picture or to actually look at an individual. That can breed so much loyalty to someone else. I mean, when you look at that, surrender has to do with something bigger than yourself. It's eliminating being self-centered because you're actually thinking about a greater purpose at hand. So that's where loyalty comes into play, because it's not always so much about what can this be for just me. It can actually be impacting how can this impact someone else. Because like you said, you might love someone, but if you know that you're not loving someone the same way they're loving you, maybe they love you more than you love them. Well, actually, it would be so incredibly selfish to hold on to that person because they deserve to be loved just as much as they love you. And even one of the final breakdowns that we had in that episode is we had talked about the difference between self-sacrificing and surrender, because you can look at surrender and you can look at self-sacrifice, and we could be thinking, oh, these ideas, they're directly related to each other. Like they mean the same thing. No, they're incredibly different. Self-sacrificing is not surrendering. Surrendering is reevaluating an investment of what you bought into. So like you think about the dreams that you have, the careers, the relationships, you bought into those things. You wanted to be part of those things. Those things hold value to you. Now, self-sacrificing, it's putting the values of others, the opinions of others, and they're being placed on you. So you're sacrificing yourself so that you can pursue really the ideas that others have for you. That is like self-sacrificing. It's not noble. There's nothing noble about self-sacrificing yourself. There's surrendering, and then there's sacrificing. And a lot of times what ends up happening is we sacrifice things that nobody actually asked us to sacrifice. Like I've had conversation with family members where it's like, well, I sacrificed this so that someone else could do this. And they're like, I wouldn't have asked you to sacrifice that. Like I didn't care that much about where we were going to eat. I didn't care that much about where we were going on this place on vacation. Like there are these moments where we're sacrificing things that actually don't need to be sacrificed. And instead, what we're doing is it's like we're trying to take a moral high ground that doesn't even really require to be taken, and nobody is finding actual value in it because once again, you were self-sacrificing something that was never really emphasized or valued much at all. And so that was a big thing I wanted you to really understand is surrender is focused externally. It's focused beyond just yourself. It's focused on so many things because like I said, it's your dreams, it's career, it's love, relationships. It's so many things. And sacrificing, when you're doing self-sacrificing, it's all about you. All self-sacrificing is really doing is it's honoring you as the victim. It's saying, ooh, poor you. Here we go. Let's self-sacrifice because you know what? I need to be the martyr. You're the martyr in your story, and you never needed to be a martyr in that story because you could have been the hero. But instead, you're like, I'm going to die for a cause that nobody really cares about. And that's a hard truth. It is. And you know what? Sometimes instead of sacrificing, if you surrender, life can be a lot easier. There's so many opportunities in life where if you just surrendered, life could be so much better for you. But instead, you do like this self sacrificing thing where it's like, look at me over here. And then it's like, next thing you know, it's like, that's the end of it. But ultimately, self sacrificing and surrendering, they are not the same thing because surrendering is focused externally. Whereas when we're looking at self sacrificing, it's always focused on you. That's really all that it is. And so to wrap this whole episode up, the episode and the phrase for silent surrender was surrender is the silver lining to power because you don't realize how powerful surrendering something or someone in your life actually can be. It can be that pivot. It can be the most pivotal moment in your life because right on the other side of that surrender could be a life that you never even dreamed was possible. And I've seen that. I've seen that with friends. I've seen that with family members. It wasn't until giving something up that you can actually find something so much greater. But if they self-sacrificed and they let themselves suffer in something that just needed to be surrendered, they would have never had the life that they could have had. Now, thank you so much for hanging out with me. Thank you for bearing with me in my cold, and I'm sure I've sounded progressively worse over time. And also, if you happen to be watching on YouTube, it's snowing outside. We had a nice, beautiful snow day today on Sunday. It's so beautiful. But anyways, thank you so much for hanging out with me, and thank you for doing this like kind of like quote unquote movie day, even though we talked about our top 3 episodes. It was a lot of fun. But I would love to connect with you more. You can connect with us on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube at Let's Unravel Pod. If you enjoyed this week's show or the podcast show in general, please leave a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and you can now leave reviews on Facebook. So please head over there so we could start getting a rating. That really helps boost our algorithm again. Also, please don't forget to hit subscribe or follow wherever you might listen to stay up to date on all new episodes. We have new episodes every single Thursday, and you are not going to want to miss a thing. Well, I guess it's that time of the episode to tell you my hot take. So are hot takes really that hot? If I'm being honest, no. I don't even know if I could think of one hot take that I've actually thought was really that hot. But I do like the premise that hot takes bring. Like, I like having those conversations. But ultimately, hot takes is really just like a trendy way of saying, hey, I think about something conventionally different than someone else, you know? But actually, okay, you know what? I will leave some room for doubt and say, hey, if you really have that interesting of a hot take, please drop it in a comment down below. I'm dying to know what your hot take is, literally on anything. What is your opinion on something that is so burning hot and so controversial? Please drop it down in the comments down below. Anyways, I will see you guys next week with another new episode, and I'll talk to you later. Bye.